Hey guys, I'm just making this little video here just to talk a little bit about Cliff Burton. Cliff Burton is one of my main influential musicians who have influenced me in my playing. Cliff was born on February 10th, 1962, and he died on September 27th, 1986. He joined Metallica in 1983 on the condition that they moved from LA up to San Francisco because he was in no way going to move down to LA. So Metallica says, okay, fine, we're gonna move up. They seen him play with Trauma, his band, and they said we have to get him in our band. Look at him, he's wild, he's crazy. So Cliff agreed to join, and then his second show with the band, I think, was March 19th, 1983. So he probably joined there December 82, which is the year actually I was born. So yeah, Metallica had various tours up until the point of when they signed their a major label, Elektra in '84. Q Prime Management, Peter Mensch, Cliff Bernstein, who they are actually still with today. So they went on a major label, and a lot of people accused them of selling out. But then again, they accused them of selling out when they wrote Fade to Black. Oh, it's a mellow song, it's not that. But it's stupid, you know what I mean? Like, they couldn't write. They did what they wanted to do, and that's what's important, I think if you play music and you do what you want to do, that's important. Anyhow, so yeah, basically, Master of Puppets, which was their breaking album, that was their third album, and that was the one that was going to make them a big player on the music scene. It debuted, I believe, at number 29 on the Billboard charts, which was unheard of for a metal band at the time, and on the fact that they got no radio play. Their songs were never on the radio. In fact, they wrote Escape on Ride to Lightning from '84 as an attempt to get a song on the radio. They really don't like that song. I believe they maybe jammed on it throughout the years since 1984, but they never really fully played it, I don't think, because that was their attempt. Just like they attempted to make a video for Seek and Destroy for the Metal Hammer Festival in September '85, with all the choppiness, and they showed they do the digital. It's from Cliff and Wall, you see it. That was their attempt at making like a video if they were gonna have a promo video. But anyways. So yeah, Master of Puppets, I believe, was released in February '86, and that summer Metallica was asked by Ozzy to be their opening slot, be his opening slot for his Ultimate Sin tour, and they agreed, and basically they realized right there that they said to themselves that they made it. Like, it's like, wow, we're opening for Ozzy. Ozzy, it's Black Sabbath, big influence to Metallica, especially Cliff Burton. He loved Geezer Butler from Metallica, from Sabbath. He really loved. They all liked Black Sabbath. Anyhow, so yeah, they did their summer slots with him and James. They had to take some time off because James broke his wrist, I believe it was. He was skateboarding, and he broke his wrist, so they had to get for their European tour that was in the fall of '86. They had to get somebody. They got their roadie John Marshall to play guitar while James sang, and you can see a lot of pictures from these shows. And John Marshall's in the back, and he's playing like, I read stories where Cliff would yell at him and make fun of him, saying, "Get the hell out here and play, man! You're in the band, like you're just as much in the, but John was kind of shy, he didn't want to do it. So anyhow, I guess you could say, we'll come to the night before, so Cliff died on September 27th, 1986 in the morning, but the night before, the band was doing interviews and doing press stuff, like, just to promote the album, to see, just a band promo type thing. And an interviewer by the name of I think it was Jorgen Holmstrom, I believe, I can't pronounce his name. He interviewed Cliff, and said that, you know, he said that all the other guys in the band were doing stuff and stuff like that, and he said so we got the chance to talk to Cliff and ask Cliff a bunch of questions about the tour and the albums and how it's gonna be, and you know, like Cliff was very optimistic and he was looking forward to the European tour, and because after that they were going to go to Japan, and he was really looking forward to that. So he was primed for that, and he was talking about, you know, like, okay, we have these dates here and we have these next dates over here. He said, but then they'll tell us that we've got huge record sales down in South America or somewhere, and so he goes, so he said, you know, I don't know where 1987 is going to take us, but it's cruel to think about it now because he never got to see 1987. So yeah, he gave quite a long interview with that guy, and he said that, you know, they talked about making videos and stuff like that. They said they never not talked about it. He said, but for at the time being, they don't feel the need to make a video. They felt they would just, you know, let their music speak for itself. And you know, the album sales were really good, so good that their manager Bobby Schneider told them that they had enough money now for each of them that they could buy a house. And Cliff Burton wanted to buy a house, and he was his girlfriend at the time. I won't say her name because I don't know if I should say her name. Anyhow, she was looking around for a house for them both because, you know, they were a steady couple and they were probably more than likely going to get married. And he said that he wanted something where he could shoot his guns, not too quiet, where he could play his music, stuff like that. So I don't know much about like California and stuff and where you could shoot guns, but they loved shooting guns up in the Maxwell Ranch where they would play music with the guys from Faith No More and stuff like that. So yeah, the fact that, you know, Cliff finally got to reap some of the benefits of from the last years, 83, 84, 85, the last 3 years of touring through the most crazy, coldest, you know, stolen equipment and all that, like recording in Denmark in the middle of the winter and for months, and they, you know, and then they finally were told they could buy a house. So that was just, you think about it now, wow, if that were now, he could buy the world. But, you know, back then that was a big deal. So he told his girlfriend to start looking around, and because, you know, he was on tour. So he, like I said, he gave the interview the night of September 26, 1986, and there's a picture of him that the guy took, and it's just a plain picture of Cliff just standing there with his jean jacket, shirt on, denim, just from the waist up, long hair, just a typical Cliff Burton picture. And it's kind of, there's some irony in that interview. In the interview, he talked about how touring has gotten better now since we got a better bus, and it's kind of ironic, I guess you could say, because about 14 hours after that interview with that journalist, he died from that bus. So it's very sad. Like, so to sum it up, I guess, I mean, I know a lot about Cliff Burton because like I said, Cliff Burton's a huge influence on me. I probably have the best Cliff Burton website on the internet. You know, so I started off. After the show, the band got on the bus. There was 2 buses. The first one had the band, some of the crew, tour manager, and the bus driver, who was just a bus driver that happened to be for the company that Metallica was, I don't know, they contracted out this bus company, and they had kind of an older guy driving them around. So they played their last show with Cliff in Stockholm, Sweden. I believe it was at the Hammersmith Odeon, or I don't know how to pronounce it. Anyhow, it was in Stockholm, Sweden, and overnight they're on their way to Copenhagen, Denmark. I've seen a picture from their last show, but I mean, the crowd is crazy, and they're all on stage and stuff, and it's just really, you just think, wow, their crowds are getting bigger, like, you know what I mean? They're getting further back from the stage. It seems like now, if you're in a famous band, you have a crowd 20 feet back from the stage. But back then, in the early days in the clubs, I mean, the people were touching their instruments pretty much. But then, you know, they were breaking it big. They had a big crowds at their shows. I mean, and that's evident in Cliff and Wall with the bass solos and stuff that Cliff played. They have from the ones from 85s and 86. So yeah, so September 26, 1986, the other tour bus had members of the crew, another technical support people, and so overnight, well, I should say before that, they were all arguing about who was going to sleep and who was going to sleep where, and so they decided to draw cards over who was going to sleep where, and Cliff drew first, and he drew the ace of spades, and so Cliff got first choice of what bunk he wanted, and he looked at Kirk and he pointed and he said, "Kirk, I want your bunk." So Kirk said, "Fine, take it, whatever, I'll sleep up front," or whatever, like he said in the VH1 Behind the Music, "It's better anyway," or something. So Cliff had Kirk's bunk that one night. I should also, I'm just going to take you back for a bit, I forgot. Like I said, James had broken his wrist and he was unable to play, so he was singing. But that night, September 26, 1986, Cliff Burton's last show with Metallica, because he died the next morning, James returned to playing rhythm. So that's really ironic, because he had a broken wrist for 6 weeks or 2 months, whatever it was. And that night he returned to playing music again, and he got one last chance to play with Cliff Burton, his bandmate, friend, the person he loved, one last time. Little did they know how the next day was going to come. But from all accounts, James played perfect. It was amazing. They rocked. It was amazing that James was back on rhythm guitar. And now when I think about that now, I think like, wow, it's kind of neat how James got to play with Cliff one last time. His hand healed for that last show. So yeah, to take it ahead, so Cliff was sleeping in Kirk's bunk. So by all accounts, the next morning, like I said, John Marshall was on the rhythm guitar player standing for James. He was aboard, and he said that the driver was going off the road, and then he overcorrected, basically turning his wheel the opposite way. And as he did that, the back end of the bus came around almost to a skid. And as it did that, the tires, I'm not quite sure how to explain it, the tires locked, and when they locked, they rolled the bus, and the bus rolled at least twice. And in all accounts, from what everybody on that bus, or anybody, what they can think of, in the aftermath, Cliff got thrown through the window of the bunk he was sleeping in, because the bunk that they were in, like the bus that they were using, wasn't particularly good for touring musicians. It was more like a bus, I guess, for taking people around and stuff. It wasn't like a luxury bus you see band that people having now, big back seats. They just had like bunked in things and put cardboards over the windows, from what I've read. So by all accounts, Cliff never woke up. He got thrown through the window, and he was halfway in the window and halfway out the bus, and boom, the bus landed on top of him. And when other band members and people came to after the bus came to a halt, some of them had to get out the emergency hatch, some of them had to bust out windows, some of them were able to get out, some were still trapped underneath. And Kirk Hammett said that he could hear everybody screaming except for Cliff, and he said he looked around and he could see Cliff's legs sticking out from underneath the bus. And James said that there was blankets around Cliff, and the bus driver goes over and starts yanking at the blankets that are there. And James grabbed the bus driver and said, "Don't take that away from him. if he's hurt really bad, leave him be. Like, they tried to move him, he wasn't moving. There was no life. Basically, the bus killed him instantly. I mean, and if I think, do you think of it like, they say, well, you know, by all accounts, he never woke up. Well, if that's how it was, then that was great, because it would have been hell for him to suffer like that. It just would not have been right to have been living that, to survive that with some kind of, maybe getting his legs chopped off or something bad. So anyhow, so yeah, after everybody came to, I think Lars broke a toe. The other guy, you know, maybe he just got a, you know, cuts and bruises. Everybody survived with minor details, minor cuts and minor bruises. But Cliff was the one whose legs were sticking out from underneath the bus. So eventually, from what I've read, a big crane came to the scene, and he lifted the bus. The crane lifted the bus up off the ground so they could pull Cliff out. But before they could pull him out, the crane, something with the crane let go, and the bus landed right back on the ground again. So in a sense, as cruel as this sounds, and as far-fetched and crazy as some people might think I am, the bus landed on Cliff a second time. He was, you know, they lifted the bus up so they could haul his body out, and then the bus, boom, came back down on him again. So if it didn't kill him the first time, the second time it killed him. So I'm hoping that the first time, when he first got thrown through the window and the bus landed on him, I'm really hoping that that was his demise, and that he didn't suffer and had, boom, and the bus land on him again. So yeah, he was the fatality of September 27th, 1986. And back then, you know, there was no press. You know, there might have been a few little snippets in newspapers, and I've got a few magazines where they took out just ads, and, you know, like Cliff Burton, Bell Bottoms Rule, and, you know, a lot of people were in shock. You know, the guys in Anthrax, and people that Metallica were touring with. It's another band I can't think off the top of my head. Just did random shows with them, and Cliff was, you know, he was a well-known guy, and he was very respected, and he was a good musician, and it's, you know, he had no part in his own death. Like, I made a Randy Rhoads video, and I said he kind of had no role in his own death as well. But with Cliff Burton, it's tragic, because usually when you think of people dying in the music industry, they usually die because of, you know, drug overdoses, or, you know, they commit suicide, or they, you know, like they take too much drugs and they die. But, you know, Cliff had nothing to do with any of that. Yeah, he smoked his weed, he did what he, but I mean, that was his choice. So for him to die like that in 1986 in such a cruel way, having nothing to do with the whole rock and roll lifestyle that many people have fallen prey to over the last whatever many years. So it's useless. You think about it, it's just completely, I'll say like Lars said, it's so useless, completely useless, that, you know, because Cliff had nothing to do with any of that. So it took them a long time to get over that. I've seen a picture of the band arriving at the hotel, and I've seen over the years one picture of the bus driver, and I wish I would have saved it, but he was an older guy. He was probably in his 50s. They arrested him, took him in for and talked to him about what happened. He claims that he hit some black guys, and James said that he walked miles for black guys, couldn't see no black guys. I don't know the weather type situations there is over there, but I don't think there's much black ice on the road in, you know, September. So he was questioned, and he was let go, and he was never charged in any way, sort of, shape, or form. And it's also been rumored that he was driving bands around again, after, killing Cliff Burton. Obviously, nobody knows. He says that he hit a patch of black ice. I personally think he fell asleep at the wheel, and when he came to, it was too late to get control of the bus. Because I don't think he was drinking, or on the influence of the drugs, because that would have been probably tested. So I think that he fell asleep at the wheel, and when he woke up, it was too late to gain control of the bus. Because I don't believe the whole black ice thing, but other people might say otherwise. So anyhow, it took them a long time to get Cliff's body back to the U.S. I don't know why. I don't think it was the fact that he died because death of an American abroad. There's a lot of paperwork and whatnot. So Cliff's funeral was on October 7th, 1986 in Castro Valley. I believe it was October 7th. If I'm wrong, forgive me, but I'm sure it's October 7th. And Cliff was cremated, and all his friends and his bandmates, they attended the funeral. Orion was played, probably the middle section that you hear at the end of Cliff and Wall. That was probably what was played, because it's very melodic and it's kind of sad. Even now when you listen to it, I kind of think, how fitting that Cliff wrote his own funeral music type thing. It's just gets you thinking, I guess. So yeah, they cremated him, and they spread his ashes at the places that he liked, at the places that he loved. The Maxwell Ranch House, where he played music and had fun with his buddies. They all took handfuls of his ashes, pieces of his ashes, and they just tossed it into the earth, and they said what Cliff meant to them. That was their way of saying goodbye. Not long after that, actually, the band decided that they didn't know if they were going to go on. Then they realized that, they came this far, they built up all this momentum. They realized that if Cliff were alive, he would want them to continue. He wouldn't say stop because I died. And I believe that too. I believe that Cliff really, he would have said continue. You guys are making this great music. We're making it big onto the scene. I want to see Metallica dominate the world and see what can happen. And so yeah, he might never have gotten to see their commercially successful Black Album. I personally don't care. I don't know what he would have thought of it. I don't want to guess. Nobody can guess his thoughts. But to me, Metallica's breaking album was Master of Puppets, and he was part of it. And I'm glad he was part of it. He only has 3 song credits of the 8 songs on the album. 8, yes. Sorry. But his feel is on that album. It's all over that album. So yeah, I'll link it to Bon Scott. Bon Scott with Highway to Hell in 1979, AC/DC. That album was the one that was putting them on the map to bring them right up to superstardom. And Bon got to be part of that. But sadly didn't get to be part of the next album because of his passing. And then boom, 1980 they came back with Back to Black. But Metallica, they had And Justice for All, then the Black Album, which was the most commercially successful. But personally, I think Master of Puppets is the best, and I believe that all 3 albums with Cliff are the best. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion, I guess. So anyhow, I just made this video because I just want people to know a little bit more about Cliff Burton, about the person that he was. I mean, I've read every single article, every single type of books, everything. I found quotes from bands, other bands, just people really respected Cliff. And I mean, the photographer that they had, Ross Halfin, who was a famous photographer, he said that Cliff ran Metallica. He said absolutely nothing happened without his consent. So that just goes to show you right there the impact that Cliff had on Metallica. And his playing is everlasting, and his 3 albums, so his music will never die. He'll always, somebody else will always discover Cliff Burton and see you know, what he could do with his instrument. So I think about Cliff all the time. I think about Dimebag Darrell all the time. You know, from Dimebag Darrell, for me, death for me was like people's John Lennon in 1980. But like I said, I was born in 1982 and Cliff died in 1986, so I was 4. I don't, you know, but I got the Black Album in 1992 when I was 10, and then as the years went by, I started getting into their older stuff, you know, and when your internet come along, more accessibility. Anyhow, so I just want people to remember that, you know, there was once a guy in Metallica who wrote some amazing songs, taught James, you know, all about harmonies and how everything works together. He taught James music theory. He was very knowledgeable. So yeah, there was a guy out there that was named Cliff Burton who was once in Metallica, and so yeah, he was only 24 when he died. 24. I'm 31. So whenever I look at pictures of Cliff, I say, oh, that guy's older than me. But really, he's only 24 years old. 24. Too young to die. So, yeah. Cliff, he loved the Misfits. He had a Misfits tattoo on his right arm. And he was the only one in the band at that time to have a tattoo. But it's funny because when you look at James now, he's covered with tattoos. Anyhow, so if anybody listens to this, and you know, I just want to share a little bit of information about Cliff Burton's life and death with the world. So yeah, thanks for watching. Don't ever forget the people who influenced you to play the instruments and the music that you play. So thanks for watching. Listen.